What up, big tunas? Silver Surfer here coming at you with a quick, well, this probably won't be too quick of an update, but some interesting turns of events for you all to witness. So let's check a message I got from a fellow hot rodder out there. I received this message and pretty common, right? My tuner has zero interest in touching my virtual VE. Now, what exactly is this vehicle? It's a Chevy truck. However, it's got a cam and it's got a turbo on it. So this tuner tuned this vehicle doing math only. So as I'm working on this, I'm looking at the timing and it's jumping all over the place simply because that choppy airflow is it's all over the place, and so it's impact, the hertz from the hertz signal from the MAF is all over, which is impacting grams per second, which is also in turn doing the final calculation for grams per cylinder, no favors, and it looks real fuzzy and bouncy, and therefore the timing is bouncing all over the place is not really good. So I laid out a few options for him, which we'll go over here in a second. But ultimately, um, this is translating into new code for the virtual VE Assistant. So, introducing Verlon Mode, named after the HP Tuners forum member Verlon, who kind of noted this as a possibility, but there's really no way to do this inside of HP Tuners. You're going to have to rely on the virtual VE assistant that I created. So as of version 1.62, you will be able to get this. So make sure you go and grab the latest version. I'll put the link in the video description and you can get it. So let's say you've decided, listen, I need speed density. Um, it's time to do it. Let's go for it. So there's another video I made. I'll show you the icon for that in a second. But Gen 4s and I think the Gen 5s they can't handle speed density. When the math has failed, there's a number of problems. So ideally, I think you should be using the 2-bar custom OS from HP Tuners. However, they have not done us any favors in that it seems to be kind of hit or miss in terms of what OS has actually got that. So on the left, you can see if you go to the OS tab in HP Tuners, if you see this, you're in luck. But some of them, you're not going to even have that option. And so this was the situation with the guy that reached out to me. Could not apply the 2-bar OS. So I'm like, why don't you just buy a different ECM that's supported? And apparently with this your truck, it has like analog cruise control, and this OS will work with that and other ones won't. So he would rather keep the cruise control than worry about the technicals of speed density. Okay, so then the next option is, well, you can actually update the bin file, the code itself to fix this problem. I'm not talking about editing a table, right? This isn't just a simple UDF that you can go in and make a change. This is actually changing global variables versus local variables and some subroutines and functions. Like you're going to be in the hex editor managing assembly code. This is not for everyone, and it's a good way to brick your ECM. So not really a good idea unless you know what you're doing. So finally, that leaves us then using Verlon mode, which is what we're going to talk about now. So I did email HP Tuner support and got some frustrating replies. Basically, they's like, nope, not gonna do it. Um, so no other solutions. Well, there are other solutions, as I kind of pointed out on the previous page. Also, we explored moving the for this particular guy that reached out to me. Maybe we can move the MAF sensor further upstream away from the intake so there's less violent churn, adding an airflow straightener, potentially even adding a larger intake tube. But ultimately, while I think those would be an improvement, uh, And he did move the math further upstream and it looked better, but still not 100% solution. So here's kind of the problem. And this is that other video I was talking about. This speed density guy down here. Get my laser pointer. Watch this video. I go into a lot of details, the technical stuff behind this. I'm not going to cover all of this in this video. But essentially, you can look at these constants. These are like pallbearers, right, at a funeral, right? Here's the casket. All six of these pallbearers are holding up this casket. Well, what happens when you go into speed density on the OEM OS? You exceed 4,000 RPMs. That causes corruption to the map squared coefficient. Well, not necessarily the coefficient, but the calculated value. And it will either go to full maximum or full minimum. So either zero or it will go up to like really crazy high numbers. And ultimately, that's going to either cause your injector to go 100% duty cycle or 0% duty cycle. Obviously, if you have big injectors and a big fuel system and you just dump fuel in there, maybe you get a bent connecting rod or cracked your uh, piston ring lands. You don't want to do that. It also causes violent bucking and jerking. It's not fun. So Verlon Mode says, hey, how about we draw that same shape, but let's do it without the map squared coefficient. And so this is the solution that was posed by Verlon. I will, there's a link in the VVE Assistant to the thread. But essentially he's saying, hey, if we can't count on the map squared coefficient being reliable, how about essentially we pre-corrupt it? We will make it zero so that when it gets corrupted, it's already factored out and, no big deal, right? So that means that now we've gone from 6 pole bearers down to 5. So this can be problematic, maybe not problematic, but it poses some extra challenge. Another way to maybe think about this is if you are doing a painting, I give you 6 different colors to do your masterpiece. Well, you can blend those colors and mix them and create new colors, and it gives you a lot of options. But if I said, all right, now do the exact same painting, but I'm taking away one of your colors, well, now all of a sudden you have some limited options in terms of the colors that you can create. So let's kind of go over the math real briefly here. If you like this math, I cover this in full detail in this video, Encyclopedia of VVE Knowledge. It goes in depth about all of this math plus DoD modes as well as single cam and dual overhead cam and how all of that goes together. But for just a regular virtual VE, this is the math that goes on. So we have our coefficients on the left, and then we have input from the map sensor and RPM sensor, and all of those are multiplied and added together, and you get the VVE air mass. So Verlon Mode says, well, this is how we're going to corrupt it. Let's just make this coefficient 0, and then 0 times whatever your KPA, your map reading is, becomes 0. And so then all of the other ones will just add up. And another way, if we simplify it, we'll just say, well, it's just 0. And ultimately that simplifies down into this equation, which is, let's just pretend we don't even have the map squared input. So we're just dealing with these 5 um, constants and readings right in here to generate that shape. So going back to the painting example, this would be kind of a standard VE table, whether you're dealing on a Gen 3 or on a Gen 4 with the 2-bar custom OS, you have a lot less rows and columns. On the 2-bar OS for Gen 4s, you have 33 rows and 33 columns. So 33 RPM breakpoints and 33 map breakpoints, okay? Now we can look at this and we can say, well, clearly that is a crystal clear picture. I recognize that. That is the Mona Lisa. A bit small, but nonetheless, crystal clear, beautiful, perfect. I get it. So then we go into a standard virtual VE table. Now, This is much larger, right? Overall size. And that's because with virtual VE, there is absolutely no limit to the number of rows and columns or whatever breakpoints that we have. So we can just keep inserting as many as we want. The coefficients then will just plug into that math equation and it will generate our 3D shape. The sacrifice, though, is obviously we can tell that, hey, this is kind of, it's not a perfect rendering of the Mona Lisa. It's a little bit blocky and fuzzy. Still, clearly, though, if I am trying to identify art, I can see it's the Mona Lisa. Hey, look, there's a hand, there's a nose. I see some eyes and eyebrows and hair, right? It's clearly identifiable, right? So we lose some accuracy. So then when we go into Verlon mode, we potentially, since we're only, to use that same analogy, painting with 5 colors instead of 6, while the colors here are the same, maybe that's not the best analogy, we can see that we lose a little bit of identifiableness. I think most people would probably be able to say, okay, clearly this is the Mona Lisa by Leonardo. I see what it is, but as far as the details, they always talk about this enigmatic smile. We can see that here. You can maybe kind of see a smirk, but we really can't see it. So there is a potential that using Verlon mode that you may lose some of your fueling accuracy and your zone transitions. I think these are okay and mitigatable, if that's even a word, if you pay attention and know what you're doing. All right, so that's the end of this slideshow. Let me jump over to the actual demo. We'll pull up the tune and logs, and then we'll jump into the virtual VE Assistant demo. All right, boys, thanks for joining me in the Horsepower Lab. Let's go ahead and get started into using Verlon mode, putting it into practice. So the first thing I have here, I have 2 files that I'm comparing. The initial file is the normal pre-speed density system. And I wanted to show you, just for completeness, the things that you ought to change. First of all, here on the OS tab, you'll notice we don't have the option for 2 bar. And if we just take a look, by the way, we can see 2009 Chevy Trailblazer SS 6 liter. We got an E67 and a T43, and this is what we have. So I would suggest, let me flip it over here to the current one. You will want to apply the speed density air mode patch. Now, this is to address a separate defect with GM controllers and speed density, and it has to do with the air calc mode. And essentially, this is saying a lot of things are happening in a V8 at high RPMs. And this computer does not have enough time to do all of those things. I mean, you're looking at 14 to 15,000 different tables in the operating system, and that ECM is looking at, nearly every single one of them to say, what do I do now? What should I do now? What's my current state? What's my condition? And when you start getting into higher RPMs, the amount of time, like clock time on your wristwatch decreases. It has to, how much air is going into each cylinder? Well, I have 8 cylinders and I got to do this within a few milliseconds. So there's a few things that it has to prioritize. So this air calc mode is what kind of, and that's a loggable PID in the scanner. Normal is saying, hey, I have plenty of time, somewhere around 4,000 RPMs. It cuts over to high speed mode. High speed meaning, hey, RPMs are high. I have to sacrifice some quality elsewhere and focus on some more important things. We see a similar strategy. Where is it here? I got to refresh my memory. Yeah, right here. This enhanced and simplified RPMs. Now, this is controllable, but this is a similar situation in terms of how frequently do I pull to look for to change fueling for the fuel trims. So, um, enhanced, I believe, one's event mode. meaning every firing of the cylinder, and the other one is time mode, which is I think every 12.5 milliseconds. It does an update on the fueling. Um, and but understand this air calc mode has nothing to do with if we go to, is it this high RPM disable. This is controlling the blending of MAF and VVE, right? So the air calc mode is a totally separate thing. And basically, this is covered in that Gen 4 speed density video, but RPMs go over 4,000, it goes to high speed mode. And then if you're in speed density with MAF failed, when you drop below 4,000, it does not return to normal. It gets stuck in normal transition. And basically, the now your fueling algorithm is off for low speed, right? So you'll get better fueling. So definitely apply this. This is another, I'm not familiar with this patch, but if you read the description, traction control issues when running in speed density. So HB Tuners has identified another problem with the controller when it goes into speed density mode. So you're going to want to apply that. Even if you don't have traction control enabled or using it, you don't want these defects to sabotage. So let's look at a few other items here. So on the engine side, you definitely want to raise this. I don't know that it will cause specific problems, but I think it might. I just can't remember. So this is basically going to say, hey, use the VE table 8100 RPMs and lower. So it kind of eliminates it from trying to look up the MAF. So you're going to want to bump that up. Obviously, the coefficients, we're going to take a heavy look into that in a little bit. And then to fail the MAF sensor, you're going to want to use these settings, and this will fail it immediately. And then you're going to want to go to your DTCs. Oh, I wonder, there we go. You're going to find these P101, 102, 103, and that says second error on here, and this is checked, but you need to change this to malfunction indicator lamp on first error, and then uncheck the service engine soon light, just so it's not in your face all the time. And those are the changes that you're going to want to make to go into speed density. So let us now open and try to work on virtual VE. So let's go into here. And this is our VE table that we started off with. So this is, again, the standard 6 coefficient. It's not done. It's under construction. You can see we have a little bit of a big jump in here, but not that big of a concern as we're starting and we're working on just hashing this out. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to get the zones, copy with axis. We're going to jump over into Virtual VE Assistant, paste in this. Then we're going to go here. We're going to copy our chart with all of our fuel trim data, pop that in here. And now let's go back over here, make sure we're on open, copy with axis, jump in here. And by the way, I added this. I don't think I released this just yet, but another new thing. When you paste this in here the first time, you will get send to VVE new. And all that does is save you from having to click over here and then click this. So the first time you paste in here, it will appear and then it goes away. You could paste it in again and it will repopulate, but you just get that one time. So don't blink. When you come over here, you'll notice it's now identical, right? And our paste special right now, we've made no changes. This is mirroring what we have over here. So when we look at this, this is the shape as drawn by 6 coefficients. You'll notice we have a new menu item here, speed density, and we can say, let's activate Verlon mode, and let's attempt to draw this shape from 6 to 5 coefficients. When we click on it, look at that. It didn't really do a very accurate rendering. So this is kind of what I'm talking about, and when I was showing the Mona Lisa, we have a little bit of work to do. This is fixable, this is doable, but we're going to have to be a little bit careful in how we do this. Now, when I first saw this, I was writing the code and I was doing testing. I was thinking, well, man, I got a defect. Clearly, that is does not agree with my earlier testing. And so it turns out there was no defect. The problem is the size of the zones. And actually, I forgot to mention, when you're in Verlon mode, you're going to notice all of the grids have changed to this red color to warn you, hey, you're doing something different, right? If I was to uncheck this, it will turn back to the blue shape. Now, coincidentally, since we converted to a low resolution with 5 coefficients, and now we said, hey, you 6 coefficients, can you draw exactly what your dollar store general cousins drew? And they're like, well, yeah, we're high resolution. We can do that. So we can go back to Verlon mode here. Um, so the solution is really, if we look at these zones, and it may be easier if we look here, show zone numbers, you can see that we have this zone, all of these zones are from 90 kPa all the way to 210. That's huge. We have a ton of resolution, these small zones up here up top. So we need to work on distributing these zones a little bit better. So that's what I did. Um, so if we look, then let me close this and we'll go to here. Now, this was just kind of the first pass. This is still relatively new here. Um, and I'm not necessarily done tuning this. This is just a work in process, but I essentially kind of just divided it up every 30 or so kPa. That's where I just plunked in a zone. So you can see 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90, so on and so forth. So I may redistribute this a little bit better, but the last one, um, it's still fairly large, but definitely this worked out better. So if we take this now, copy with axis, and let's redefine our zones here, save and exit, and we look in here. And by the way, this is the 5 coefficient one. And so, well, let's just copy this. This isn't exactly how you would tune it, but um, we'll get into that in a second. And so now if we go to Verlon mode, so 6 coefficients kind of wigged out when we went there, but at any rate, this is still doable. It works. So let's say, and I'll show you a little bit about editing. This paste special still works as normal. And we can do our calculate coefficients, just let it run through. And it looks kind of ugly. As you can see, this is not generating a very nice VVE shape. We can still kind of see the essence of some nice little areas here. We have a zone that a little bit of a nice transition. You can see the seam running here. But overall, I've seen much worse virtual VE tables. But you can still come in here, right? And part of the problem is we're not really using the old one. So let's let's hold off for a second and we'll come back over here. Essentially, you're going to mess around with this and then you're going to go back in here and you're going to do view coefficients. Now you'll notice, since we have Verlon mode activated, we have zeroed out this map to coefficient. So what you would do is for each one of these, hit copy to clipboard, come over to here. And by the way, you will never, if you're going to be using this system, you will never be able to use calculate coefficients in here again, because this is hard coded to use all 6 of them. So you have to use the calculate coefficients within this tool to pre-zero this out. So basically you then copy each one, come back in here, you're going to paste it, Obviously, you're going to want to do manifold switch open at a minimum. If you want to, you'll have to apply it all to the rest of these, so on and so forth. And you'll do that for each one of these map squared, and this one should all be 0 when you're done. Map times RPM, RPM, and RPM squared. And that's what all of these represent. All right, well, I almost forgot, but through the magic of editing, there's one other thing we needed to cover. So in the view coefficients, you'll notice there are some other tabs. So you have a 3D map. I mean, should be no surprises there, but there's also this lengthy like stuff in here that kind of covers everything that I talked about, but there are links down here at the bottom. So you may want to read through this. This should explain stuff in general. If you have any questions, obviously, you can reach out to me, post in a YouTube comments or maybe on the forum or something. But uh, y- anyway, these links are all pretty good, I think, in terms of learning what's going on. Let's do this. Let's kind of also work on some tuning here. Let's not save those changes. We'll do the 6 coefficient model. We're going to come into virtual volumetric efficiency, copy with axis, paste this, and send to new. So this is kind of our starting point then, right? Now I haven't calculated the coefficients yet. Um, So we may want then to, if we highlight this zone, I'll do Control G on my keyboard. It will fill out these missing cells, and that will make the calculate coefficients much better. This is the problem in general is when you don't do this because it's basically it's saying, oh, well, clearly you want the old data that does not have any cell hits. So I have to generate a shape that uses the original values plus the ones that you've copied and paste special to. And so that's why you get real funky shapes in your VE whenever you just blindly copy paste special and calculate. So we're just going to do some basic stuff here. This will take a little bit of time. And let's do that. And we'll start making some broader strokes up here just for the sake of time. Now, the more of these cells that you automatically fill in, it can lead to undesirable outcomes. Your best bet is you should have already been working on your VE shape. It should be relatively close. If you're just starting out and you've done only the first couple logs or two, and you're still roughing in the shape, this method isn't really going to work. You need to kind of look at it and visually predict it and fill it in. So now that we have those filled out, let's just run some iterations here and see what kind of shape we get. So this is starting to look a lot better. So we did 10 passes to generate this shape, and we can see a clear definition of some stuff that we want. Now, at this point, I would probably say, well, I do need to smooth some things out. So what I love about the HP Tuners editor is that you can click and drag these and set them. With this software I'm using for the graphing, obviously you can't. Hopefully in the future we can solve that. But for now, I still find value in coming over to here and pasting this all in and then kind of looking at this stuff and then manually changing it. So, maybe, and I'm not going to do a super detailed job. I'm just going to kind of do a few things here just to show you another new piece of functionality that hopefully should help. So I'm just smoothing this stuff out, trying to get things in check a little bit. And let's just knock some of this out. So we'll say 0.995. So we're going to knock out a 0.5%. Try to flatten that up. And we have this other one next to it that looks like it needs the same treatment. All right, and maybe this guy here needs to have some wind taken out of his sails as well. All right, so we've made a few edits. And again, resist the urge to calculate coefficients. That's going to mess you up. And then maybe, you know what, we need to, let's pop this up. Now, the whole point of what I'm doing here is that we're kind of prepping this for moving it into the VE tool that I wrote and getting ready to calculate coefficients. And so we can see maybe we want to move this out too, move it down, I should say. So let's knock that down. Sorry, I lost my place here. So we got the 115 row to the 90 row. So we would multiply that, bring it down a little bit. And obviously we have some other areas, right? And I would keep smoothing this out and blending it. Obviously we have a big jump here. But the whole point is I did a lot of work hand smoothing this. So I'm going to copy with Axis, move it over to here, and I'm going to paste from clipboard, and you're going to see this shape change. Now, what do you suppose will happen if I hit calculate coefficients? It's going to say, okay, well, against what? I need to apply all of these changes from the histogram and then calculate coefficients. And you can temporarily suspend that. And I would kind of recommend doing this because, well, I'll show you what will happen. So if I hit calculate coefficients, guess what? It's going to take me right back to that original shape that I had created. And all that hand smoothing then was for nothing, right? Well, that's not what I want. So let me paste from clipboard. And again, you don't have to do this, but just understand you may have to kind of temporarily override the effects of going to a 5 coefficient model. So we can say options and we can say ignore histogram when calculating the coefficients. So now if I click this and I do that, nothing happens, right? No changes are made. And you don't even necessarily have to click that because when you come now to speed density and you do view coefficients, it just recalculated all of those items. So at this point, the task is the same. Copy to clipboard and manually transfer these over to your virtual VE coefficients. Now, one other thing that I want to show you, let's not change that. Let me open this guy up and let's go to the 6 coefficient model. I want you to take a look and kind of commit this to memory of what this shape looks like. All right. Not too bad, pretty smooth. We definitely have this guy in here, but you know, we have some ridges and ripples that will eventually be smoothed out. Let's now go into here and just say, well, I think I can just come in here and mark these 0. How will that impact the shape? Well, the problem is we haven't offloaded the duties of this pole bearer, this map squared guy, into the other coefficients. So if we blindly do that, look at all these values that change. Let's go back to open. And now look at this shape. That looks nothing like a real VE table. So it's important then, you can't just zero that out. You have to use Verlon mode in here. So so far, and by the way, the guy, I haven't even tested this on my vehicle, which I probably should have. It's an NA CAMS LS3, but this guy's, you know, like, all right, let's do it. First guy in history to run a 5 coefficient VE table and on a boosted application at that, and everything's working great, no problems. And actually, let me show you the log file here real quick. Hang on. Here's the first log that we got after going into Verlon mode, first time in history. So the first thing I want to look at is here, you can see the RPMs. They've exceeded 4,000 RPMs. Air calc mode is going to high speed. Under 4,000, it's normal. We hit high speed, we drop down, and it goes back to normal. And that's what that air calc mode patch does within HP tuners. You should have that in your vehicle. But this is the point when we look at this log, I'm zooming out, we don't hit 4,000 until here. The next thing I'm looking at, well, this says, wrong thing, I changed this. This should be VVE. We don't actually have the virtual VE, the native units in here, the, was it milligrams times Kelvin divided by kPa or whatever it is. But either way, I'm looking at injector duty cycle. It never spikes after this. We go past 4,000, and uh, that's also covered in that other Gen 4 speed density video. But typically, what will happen after this, you would see a huge spike in the cylinder air mass, and then that would cause a corresponding huge spike in the injectors. So we didn't have any problems, which is great. Once you exceed 4,000 the first time, you're going to start getting them every few seconds, several times a minute, where it really jerks the car around. So this worked. It's beautiful. It's great. Anyway, so try this out. Use it. Let me know your thoughts if you have any success or issues. But anyway, thanks for watching. Happy tuning, and see you in the winter circle.